Recording 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. Really appreciate you sharing your heartbeats with me. I am David Gonzo Milano, the host and the quote unquote talent of the Gonzo Experience podcast. I have a great guest today, and he's a personal friend, Jay Myers. Jay, welcome to the show.
Appreciate it, David. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, Jay, we go back. I brought you up as a speaker for EO, our Entrepreneurs Organization chapter years ago. Met you probably in 2005-ish, I bet, at an Inc. magazine conference panel we were on in Aspen, Colorado. It was the only time I was there. I love that place. But Jay, you've got one hell of an entrepreneurial story, and we're gonna go through your journey today. But just to give an overview, Gonzo family, of what you're going to hear today. So Jay Myers, well, he looks like just a regular, ordinary, guy, right? I mean, you don't have the bruises or the scars by looking at you of the journey that you've been on, but you've been on one hell of an entrepreneurial journey. We're gonna get through that. So Jay has a new book out, and it's called Rounding Third and Heading Home. If you're watching this, I'm holding it up. This is your third book. And it's the emotional journey of selling his business and the lessons that he learned along the way. Now, just so you all, I'm going to give you a little intro here, Jay. Jay started a company back in 1996, and it's called Interactive Solutions. And it specialized in video conferencing, distance learning, telemedicine, audiovisual sales, and support. So it sounds like you were Zoom before Zoom even knew what it was, right? And and
Yep.
You recently sold it for a lot of money. I'm assuming. I'm hoping you have a big bag of money at home, and that's why you look so happy right now. But you built that company into a $25 million company, 51 employees, right out of Memphis. But you also have Nashville, Chattanooga, Knoxville, Birmingham, Oxford, Mississippi, Little Rock, Arkansas offices. So you really built this into a beautiful empire, right? But as we're going to find out, you definitely had, right from the very beginning, some major pitfalls along the way. And that's why I love you, Jay, because that's why I want to have you on the show. As you may know, my book is called Crash and Learn. And it's all about, we're going to crash. Entrepreneurs, inevitably we're going to crash, but it's not about burning. It's about learning and rising like the Phoenix again. And you've done that multiple times, right? And we're going to talk about a couple of those instances. But this is your third book. Your first book was Keep Swinging, an entrepreneur's story of overcoming adversity and achieving small business success. What was your second book, Jay?
Hitting the Curveballs, How Crisis Can Strengthen and Grow Your Business.
Yep. And then now this one, Rounding Third and Heading Home. So I'm sensing a baseball theme. And I know that you like the Yankees, even though you're in Memphis, Tennessee, you're a Yankees fan. In fact, if you're watching this, you all will see his background is the Yankees stadium. And I think you're on the field, right? You're visiting there.
I'm actually at bat. I'm the guy. I'm the guy in the batter's box there, and the guy on the mound is Jeff Nelson. This was taken in 2008, a one-day fantasy camp, David, in New York City, the old Yankee Stadium before they tore it down. And probably, even including any business issues, the most intimidating experience of my life. Looking at a man that's 6'8", had 4 World Series championship rings, and he's throwing the ball. You're hoping he doesn't hit you and hurt you, which is what I was asking before in my request, but had a whole lot of fun. And your listeners may want to ask, like, why am I a Yankee fan? I mean, Memphis, what's the connection? Most people in Memphis, by the way, are St. Louis Cardinal fans. My connection is that my father was a big Yankee fan, and he loved Mickey Mantle. My father grew up in Oklahoma. So did Mickey Mantle. They grew up about an hour apart. And as I've told the story for years, David, it's kind of one of those things that if Mickey Mantle wasn't God in my house, he was kind of like his little brother. And so it went from there. The first little league team I played on was the Yankees, and just had a lot of fun supporting them through the years. It's been a lot of ups and downs for a while there, and then they had some success, and but it's just a lot of fun to support the team.
All right, very good reasons. Being here in New York State, we will take you as a proud fan. Thank you for that. So Gonzo family, here's why you need to listen to this podcast. Jay is a rugged, roll your sleeves up entrepreneur. He's gone through, from what I know, at least two major trials with embezzlement, right? Went through cancer, melanoma, right? And continue to move forward. And then we're going to hear about that, but we're also going to hear about how, even though Jay wasn't necessarily ready or willing to sell his business, he did. And we're going to hear about that as well. And he might make you cry at the same time, because he's going to tell us about the giving his daughter away at the wedding recently. And he, at the beginning of his book, he talks about that. And even I got a little teary eyed. I have a 16-year-old daughter, and the thought of walking her down the aisle and handing her off to another man, even at this age, makes me a little nauseous. But you made the eyes water with this book already. So damn you. But
sorry about that, David.
It's all right. It's all right. It's good to get a little cry out every now and then. But Jay, tell us your journey. Tell us that, and what I love about you is, like we said, you tell us the good, bad, and ugly. A lot of entrepreneurs just want to share the good stuff and the magazine cover. But you tell us you tell us what's going on behind the scenes as well. Not everybody does that. And I appreciate that, because I think it endears you to a lot of entrepreneurs who are struggling and wondering why, everyone else is getting it right and they're not. And we know that's not true. So thanks for sharing. I appreciate that.
Sure. Well, I got started, David. I'm not a hero out there, in terms of starting my business. I had worked years ago for a telecom company and embraced video conferencing in 1990. And I was a data products manager. And I thought the technology made a lot of sense. I had worked for corporate people, companies before that and everything. And I just thought that, gosh, if you can meet in a different way and not have to get on a plane and hotel and all the expense and everything, that this would be a good way to do it using technology. And by the way, one of those corporations I used to work for is a Rochester-based Eastman Kodak. So anyway, and had a good run with them. And any event though, the telecom company, I was an entrepreneur, built up the business within the company. And then on my 39th birthday, lo and behold, I got fired and devastated, didn't know what to do, didn't really want to go to work for somebody else, didn't have a business plan, didn't have any money, and just kind of had to grind away. And I ended up putting together a little makeshift business plan and took it to some private investors. Took it to 10 banks. They all turned me down. Took it to a few private investors, and one of them, God bless them, decided to roll the dice and take a chance on me. And I got in business in 1996. Me, myself, and I. Then I brought in a half of employee and admin to help me out in the office, and then shortly thereafter, a partner. And then, for your listeners out there, David, I don't care what kind of business you're in, whatever you think is going to happen and you're hoping and everything. My advice to any entrepreneur out there starting a business, at least in the early days, expect the unexpected. In our case, we had financing with the business off, we're running, and then 3 months after they'd committed for a whole year's worth of funding, they pulled out from under us. Okay, that was unexpected. What happened after that? You mentioned it earlier. I go in to get my hair cut, and the lady discovers melanoma. And I had to go through the surgery and all that stuff. I thought I was going to die. I mean, I'm not being dramatic. I'm telling the truth. The unexpected again. Then at the end of that same year, that would never seem to end, we had the first brush with embezzlement. A supplier stole $15,000 from us. We ordered a product, sent him a check, nothing came back. Got a call from the attorney general, talked about it and everything, prosecuted, but we didn't get anything back. For entrepreneurship and everything, it's a lot that goes into being able to succeed. But I think the most important thing for me is that and this is plain vanilla, David, but you just don't give up. If you believe in what you're doing, and in my case, I was too either stupid or stubborn or both, that I just didn't see any reason to fold up the tent. I didn't want to go to work for anybody else again. So at that point, I had a partner that I brought on, technical guy, and he lived up in Kentucky, and we grew the business and pretty significantly the year after the startup. And then, startup, you've got a bootstrap, right? So I ended up having we had some issues with some profitability, and I we had two separate offices, Kentucky and Tennessee. And I offered my partner, like, a little package for him to move to Memphis. He chose not to do that. So here's the other unexpected thing, David. I had to buy him out and almost went out of business before I even kind of got started in business. And it just, those are the kind of things that are going to happen. I went from originally 17.5% ownership when I had the investors to 2 years later, 100%. And which all sounds great, to people. And they're thinking, well, God, isn't that cool how that worked out for them? Well, you know what? I referred to myself in those days. I was a king of nothing.
Mhm.
I, we weren't making any money. But fortunately, my instincts were that I felt like by buying out the partner, not having two separate offices, we could consolidate and move forward. And we did that, and we grew significantly. And you and I shared some of those common experiences because we grew to make it to the Inc. 500 list and all those kind of things, and so got close to the organization and had a lot of fun. But other challenges occurred, and if you will let me, I'll just tell you quickly as I can. It's hard to tell this story, but quickly. But I guess it was in year 7 of the business. Reading Inc. magazine one night, I thought about this story called "A Thief Within," and it was actually I was reading about this article about these two brothers that had a business outside of Chicago, and they were talking about their accounting manager stealing a bunch of money from them, forgery, credit card, all this stuff. And the article was buzzing around in my head. And this is a part, I guess you might call it, where art imitates life, or I don't know how you determine that. But what I was reading, it was in my head the next day. And I literally had this like epiphany of maybe this could happen in my business. Called the receptionist to look at the payroll records because that's what they had said in the article was one of the ways the other lady person stole from. And lo and behold, I discovered my accounting manager was stealing from me.
Wow.
And to make it a long story, much shorter, beyond payroll that she stole about $45,000. There's another 210 or so. Total theft is 260,000 or so dollars. It was so crazy, go from reading a magazine to having this happen. End up prosecuting. Secret Service prosecuted him. We ended up throwing her in federal prison. All of this is in the first book, Keep Swinging. All the emotion. It doesn't read like a business book. It reads like a whatever suspense novel.
Hmm.
But challenges happen, David, and oh gosh, you got through that and everything. Yeah, we did. We were very fortunate. God smiled on us. It could have gone the other way. And the thing I'm so still proudest of, and it's been a long time ago, 2004, as I think about it, is that the year after the embezzlement, the year that we almost went out of business, we doubled business. And so sometimes things like that for your listeners out there and entrepreneurs, when you think the world's all falling apart on you, that, and I never realized at the time, that I've got this resilience, and I didn't know how to spell resilience. I just was putting one foot in front of the other and trying to get through it. Let me digress. The thing that made it even more difficult about the situation with the embezzlement was I discovered the theft and realized that the accounting manager had started stealing from me within days after my 50-year-old brother dropped dead. So I had personal and professional stuff hit me, and it was just too crazy. But as time goes on, went on, and everything. A few years later, we had to deal with, like a lot of people, I deal with the recession. And our story on that, David, is very frankly, in 30 days, we had 80% of our sales team leave the company, all for good reasons. Start their own thing, go to work for a supplier, customer. Had that happen all in 30 days. So 4 guys, and then also a friend that of ours went on vacation, never came back, died on the literally on the beach. Had a technician that worked for us go in the hospital for a liver transplant, never came out. Had to attend 2 funerals, Saturday, and then on top of it, all in 30 days. And on top of that, then I had to deal with my wife with a major healthcare crisis. So it was just it really, once again, expect the unexpected. We had to deal with something that we never saw coming. And for your listeners out there and entrepreneurs, it's all about how you respond to adversity. Whatever you think is going to happen when you first start the business, just one day at a time, man. And it never works out exactly how you think it's going to. At least not for me. And in the case of the, the whole situation of the big turnover in that tumultuous summer in those 30 days, David, here's the best part of it. That happened in 2007. We ended up building the company with a bunch of young people, trained them, hopefully, I guess, inspired them at some level to join a cause, help me rebuild the company. And then from '07 to 11, you want to hear the best part? We went from 11 to $25 million
Wow.
during the recession. And I
Yeah.
still think that's why I wrote the second book. I said, God, that's crazy, man.
Yeah.
It wasn't about patting myself on the back. It's about patting them on the back, because how do you do that? They didn't even know anything about my technology. But when, that's another aspect of all these things, writing books and all, is that, when you're out there and you're trying to do the right thing and you're working hard and you put together a good brand for your company, people want to join you. And even in our case where it was trouble, I think that motivated them to, hey, we can do this and help this guy out. We can make some money, but also do something we could tell our grandkids. So
Well,
that's kind of, the run up to all this stuff.
I'm sensing that, it's like sometimes everything has to fall apart in order for it to grow again, right? The forest fire, right? Scorched earth, and then the forest, years later is much bigger, right? Because it had a chance to start over, and you've had a few of those instances, right, where your earth was certainly scorched, and you probably were up all night, many nights, thinking like, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. Yet, your perseverance, your endurance, and your faith got you through, not only to survive, but really thrive to the next level.
Well, I think that can happen for the other entrepreneurs and small business owners out there that are listening. Crisis can strengthen and grow your business. It can be a motivational platform to do that. And I think in our case, you just mentioned staying up at night. I can tell you, I was scared and so
Krampus.
traumatized by that summer. I was afraid to turn the lights off in my bedroom, because it was like, man, what's
Yeah.
the next day going to look like? It was too scary. But I think sometimes when you get backed up, you get backed into a corner and you're, against the wall and everything, that's the true test of, not just me, man, my employees. How tough are you? How gritty, and how much determination can you put together to go get the job done? And they did. I'm very proud of them.
I heard a great metaphor the other day when, and I actually talk about this in my book. There, so when a hurricane hits, right, and we see it on the news, and it looks like these trees, usually they're like palm trees, right, bending over, look like they're going to break, right, get uprooted, and you think it's going to kill or hurt the tree. But ultimately, what happens is it strengthens the tree, because the roots get stronger in holding that tree in. And so the metaphor is, the storm, will make you stronger, right? It just got to hold on, right?
Well, when you're going through it, David, and as you wrote about in your book, you don't know it at the time that's going to happen. It's not predetermined. But when you look in the mirror and say, well, what's the alternative here? Okay, I had a lot of bad stuff happen that summer. Am I going to give up on a business that we'd worked so hard to build? The thing about that particular situation, just real quick comment about it, is that, in the case of the embezzlement, I got to be honest with you, I got so caught up with the cops and robbers part of it with the Secret Service, and we got some money back, about half of it. We were, if we hadn't caught her when we did, we were going to be in real deep trouble. But at the point we caught her, we were able to survive, to endure. But that was money. And you can always make more money if you get out there and hustle and all those things. In the case of that summer of '07, it was like everything felt out of control. And that's the kind of thing where you've got to really look in the mirror and say, is this the time to pull the ripcord and bail out, or is this the time to put on your big boy pants yet again and get it done? And I just had this thing in the back of my head, maybe again, stupid, stubborn. I just felt like we had some brighter days ahead. With a new crew came in, we weren't a perfect company before that. And gosh, you know what? It's amazing. And where I'm doing, by the way, just a real quick aside, where I'm connecting up with you on this video interview and everything, I'm at my house in Florida, and this house was paid for with money as a result of what those young people did for me 10 years ago. And it's just, I'm very, very proud of what they did. because again, no experience in the industry, just determination. And we did a lot of it, by the way, in healthcare and telemedicine, which obviously now is very hot.
Yeah. Yeah. You definitely were ahead of the curve, right? So,
We were.
or in your case, I'll say ahead of the curve ball, since you're
There
such
you
a
go.
customer. There you go. Right? So fast forward. No, thank you for that. Thank you for sharing the good, bad, and ugly. Yeah, and God bless you for enduring the storm and continuing to move forward. I mentioned on this podcast, one of my favorite quotes is from Winston Churchill. When you're going through hell, don't stop.
Right.
Don't stop.
Right.
So you sold your business, pretty recent, right?
Yeah, well, pretty recently. So we closed November the 1st of 2018. And obviously, last year was such a crazy year and everything. So I did stay on with the business that acquired us for a year, kind of as a consultant in 2019. And yeah, so it's been fairly recent. It feels like it was yesterday.
How was that year consulting afterwards? I'm going to guess that it sucked, but maybe it was different for you.
No, I'd like to tell you some nice answer to that, David. It pretty much sucked. I mean, entrepreneurs, all of us, you, me, everybody that's listening, we don't work for other people. And I even told the acquiring company, the CEO, I said, look, man, I'm going to make it real simple for you. We do this deal. I don't work for anybody else. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, what I am willing to do, since the acquiring company appointed my son general manager, I said, I'll hang around and help him. So that's what the deal was.
Yeah. Yeah. I predicted that it sucked because I've heard that from so many business owners, entrepreneurs that have sold their business. They stay on for a year. And if they last the whole year, it's quite an amazing feat. Right. And yeah, it's you become you feel like a caged animal, right? Like what? I can't work for somebody else. Right. So, yeah. So you sold the business. I want to talk about that. How, and kind of leading questions because, through your book, you mentioned that, you maybe weren't ready to sell, but how did you quote unquote know that it was time to sell?
Well, I think that I looked at where we were at as a company and the growth opportunities. And frankly, David, looked at what the expense and lines of credit and all that stuff to grow the business significantly. My wife and I had taken all that, signed off on all these lines of credit and everything. And we just honestly got a little bit weary of that. And we, in the book, as you noticed, that I dodged these calls all the time. People would call us at least once a month. Oh, we want to buy your potential, this, that, and all. And we just blew them off. But this last one in 2018, it was the largest company in my industry, largest audiovisual integration firm in the world. And it was like, okay, that's not just somebody knocking on your door. That's the 800-pound gorilla. So we looked at like, okay, who would best be equipped to take this company into the future and is strong enough financially to be able to grow it effectively. And so that's really what it had a lot to do with it. Personally, I wasn't necessarily ready, although I'd been with these books and a lot of public speaking and everything. I had, kind of a side gig going for a while. But, David, for your listeners out there, and I hope they will read the new book, it's not about selling your business when you're ready. You sell it when it's ready. And the other
That's huge.
thing
Say that again, Jay. That's freaking huge.
So you don't, I mentioned about personally, was I ready? I don't know about that, but you don't sell your business when you're ready. You sell it when it's ready, the business. So I learned that, that you have to look at the business as an entity and see what needs to be done there. And the business was ready, David.
It was
It
ripe.
was.
It was ripe.
Yeah,
Huh?
it was just because we had just come off the second biggest year we'd ever have. And that's another thing in the book I mentioned. Timing to these deals is everything. The other part of it too, though, is at least in the industry, the audio, visual, and video conferencing, so many guys that have worked so hard to build up these businesses have this false impression of what they're worth. And here's the other tip for your listeners out there: it's not what you think your business is worth; it's what somebody is willing to pay for it. That's the only number that. And in our case, we came off our second biggest year. The momentum was very strong and a lot of good things were going on. The acquiring company looked at us and said, "Gosh, they got a really nice group of corporate customers, the FedExes, AutoZones, people like that. They also looked at the fact we had a significant amount of repeat business. Acquiring companies want to make sure that you got things rolling every month, year, whatever, under contract, and so that was a big deal. And I guess the other thing I can say is that when the a company looks at you to potentially acquire you, this is kind of plain vanilla, and you're going to laugh about this, but let me encourage your listeners out there. If you have a business that you're interested in selling and everything, make sure you don't have any lawsuits. I mean, don't, because they look at all that stuff, and it's a process, David. I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, the due diligence part, when you kind of get serious about things and start documenting, signing documents, and all this kind of stuff, it is an absolute bear. It's the most mind-numbing experience I've ever been through. And here's the other little tip underneath all that. It's hard to sell a business when you're still running the business. And particularly when they're due diligence, where they're looking for all these documents and all this kind of stuff and licenses and whatever contracts. If I went out there and tried to get that information for my staff, that would have run up red flags like crazy. I was fortunate. My son was kind of like the bad cop. He raced around getting all that stuff, and we used him to do that because prior to the acquiring company coming in and buying us, the idea for me, because I just felt like it was time for me to move on, was to hand the business off to him. Very bright young man, MBA, blah, blah, blah. And when that offer came through, I said, okay, we're going to have to move the goalposts a little bit, move them in. And how about you help me with this? And then, we'll do some things with the proceeds from the sale. So that's what ended up happening.
So thank you for that. Here's the big question, Jay, right? So the beginning of your book, you talk about within a week, you walk your daughter down the aisle. You like the man that she's about to marry.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a celebration, right? But you're giving up, quote unquote, giving up one huge thing in your life. And then later that week, once again, a celebration. You're selling a profitable company. Again, I'm assuming you got a nice big bag of money at home. Another celebration, right?
Right.
But how do you feel?
Well, in the case of that week, gosh, David, one of my employees, when we divulged the whole information about the sale and everything, he said, I can't believe this. In 4 days, you walk your baby down the aisle. And then now we're doing this. She said, dude, I'm surprised you're not in the hospital. And I started laughing. I said, well, maybe I should be. But, I was at peace with the fact that, with both, events. But David, I think really important for your listeners, and if no other reason than this to buy the book, is read the stories I talk about, the emotional side of this. Your listeners need to understand that when you sell a business, it's way, way more than a financial transaction. Yes, God smiled on us. I'm taking care of my kids and my grandkids with the money and the proceeds. Wonderful. But David, here's the thing, you can lie to whoever you think you can, but you can't lie to yourself. And when I kept telling my people through the years, they'd always ask me, are you going to sell ever, blah, blah, blah. And I go, no, I didn't start this business for money, and I'm not going to get out of it for money. So you're probably thinking to yourself, well, what did you just do? I wanted and still do my baby to grow, and I was looking for the best route to do that. But for your listeners that would ever consider this, strap it on, man. It is an emotional ride. I mean, when you build it out of dirt, it's way more than a business. I mean, you and I both know you've done that, and it's hard. And their employees, I never looked at them as employees for the most part. They were family. I knew their kids' names, their spouses. We did picnics. We did this. We did that. And so you have to understand. Everybody thinks, oh, Jay's down in Florida, which I am right now at my house. Oh, well, he sells his business. He's kicking up in the sand, and everything's wonderful. Some days it is. And then some days I miss the fight, the challenge, the wins, even dealing with some of the losses and those sort of things. But
Because you're still a young guy.
well, I'm not as young as 64, but still, David, I think here's my advice: is that you got to prepare for this kind of stuff way in advance. In my case, I thought I was as prepared as anybody could be for this. As you know, I do a lot of public speaking. I spoke to your group up at the EO chapter. I've done that for years. Now the third book, it takes a long time to write a book, by the way. And, when you do, and I was covering up, and I'm the executive in residence at the University of Memphis, mentoring these, young people, doing this, doing that. But when you're used to, and you know how this is, that when you're used to just having everything go 150 miles an hour, it's hard to slow down to 70. Okay. I think it's pretty much impossible. So even now, almost 3 years later, I'm having to fill up my day with a lot of things and self generated, because before they were already, I had people knocking on my door every 10 minutes, and, that doesn't happen now.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because I asked that question because, you being an avid reader of Inc. magazine back in the day, like me, you may remember the journey of when Norm Brodsky was selling his business, and he sold it for like $180 million, right? So obviously he was going to have a very big payday, but he was still struggling because in his mind he was so intertwined. His identity was so intertwined in the business. He started thinking like, well, without the business, who am I? You say he goes to a show and he sees people and he's Norm Brodsky from City Storage. And now he's, Norm Brodsky, who with what, with who, right? And he just was really struggling that, and obviously he got over it and he's done many great things since then. But did you experience some of that? Like, I am my business. It's in my DNA. And who am I without my business? Were you worried about that you would have trouble grappling with your identity?
David, it's funny that you mentioned that today as we do this podcast. I just came back from a Chamber of Commerce meeting, this Anna Maria Island where we live. We went to this a small chamber, went to their thing, and part of their process at lunch is everybody stands up and introduce themselves. I was so programmed to Jay Myers, founder CEO of Interactive Solutions, I almost had to go like, okay, I am. Let me think. Who am I? No, there is an identity thing, and then I formed a little company, a little S corp that has JBM Enterprises, and I just put a lot of things that I was doing underneath it. A little bit of consulting. I write some articles for an industry magazine, the books, and just kind of an accounting sort of type of thing more than anything else. But yeah, you do. You have to work hard to form essentially a new identity. I don't know. You mentioned Norm Brodsky, but I'm trying to remember the name of the man that wrote the book about. It's called The Second Half. I think
Yeah.
Bob Buford, and he talks about that the second half can be way better than the first.
Yeah.
You can have a better second career than you did your first one. And I think obviously I'm going to have to do some things to be able to achieve that, but I'm interested in being all I can be at the second half and just, enjoy it and everything. But this notion of sitting back as an entrepreneur, I just have to say this one more time. This notion of an entrepreneur sitting back and going to the beach over here and kicking up in the sand, forget it already. All of us that go on the beach, we're entrepreneurs. We'll be there for about 45 seconds. We've got to get up and move around. Sitting around reading books all day, probably not. We're spinning all the time. That's the way the DNA works. So you have to channel that into a place that makes sense. And in my case, I mean, part of the if you want to call it therapy, was to write the third book, because the pandemic hit. I had a lot of time on my hands, and the more important than that was I also wanted to take all this stuff that had happened over 20 something years and to, in essence, answer the question like that people, your listeners out there might be saying, like, why him? Why his business? That's what the question I was asking myself. I looked around and go like, how did we get here? And I started looking back through the years. Why did this company have interest in us? And this is probably one of the more important parts of this podcast that your listeners could get some value out of. There are certain things that companies look for, no matter what kind of business you're in, that make them attractive to acquirers, or just make them more valuable if you never want to sell it. I mean, plain vanilla stuff, but how you treat your employees, what's your turnover rate, what's your culture like? Look at customer service. How do you treat your customer? How many repeat customers you have? What's your reputation? What's your brand look like? All that's in the book. And I think that those are the things that we didn't know at the time, but when we look back on it and everything after the acquisition, we realize, well, that's what made them come after us, because it wasn't the other way around. I wasn't in the market to sell. They came after me. And I think that, when you look at those kind of things and building value, again, it gives you at least the option to sell.
Yeah, I think Bob Buford and other people too, Jack Stack, with the Great Game of Business, they always, even though they don't want to sell your business, run it like you do, right? Like run the financials, run it like it could be purchased at any given time. Because even if you don't sell, it's just healthier for the business anyway, right? So
yeah, give you the option.
Comes along, a suitor comes along, you're prepared and ready to rock and roll, right? So ready to play ball. So Jay, all these baseball for you, just for you, So
yeah, there you go.
Well, Jay, again, thank you so much. I appreciate you, writing your third book here. And once again, if you're watching this, I'm holding it up. Rounding Third and Heading for Home by Jay Myers on Amazon, and 2 other books on Amazon as well. I think I have all 3 books because you sent it to me. So thank you, Jay. Appreciate that.
You're quite welcome.
So thank you for sharing your story, the good, bad, ugly, sharing, the embezzlements and all the just really some tragedies along the way, and having cancer, and but continuing to have the endurance to push through, and what a great, I don't want to say ending, but what a great way to exit that business, and really I'm looking forward to seeing what your second act is going to be, as Bob Buford talks about in his book. A lot of times it has to do a little bit more with charitable giving, or what do they say, the time, treasure, talent, right? Spend a little bit more time giving back and helping others. And I have a feeling you'll be doing that if you're not doing it already. So knowing your good heart and soul. So, but Jay, thank you so much. If people do want to get in touch with you and reach out and say hello or learn more, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, I'm very active on LinkedIn, so they can find me there, JB Myers, and it posts a lot of things there, at JB Myers on Twitter, and his email, Jay at jmyersceo.com. So I'm pretty active. I do some things on Instagram occasionally, but those are the probably the best places to connect with me. jmyersceo.com is actually the website for the new book and the other ones as well. But I'd love to, David, I appreciate it very much being on your show. And I would say that, my DNA is, kind of to give back. I am involved with the Service Corps of Retired Executives, SCORE. So I've got clients and doing those kind of things, and, mentoring the students at the University of Memphis and other places. I'm very involved in the Collegiate Entrepreneurs Organization that, by the way, is based here in Tampa, and all those kind of things. So yeah, I like to help people. So any of your listeners, man, contact me. If I can help you in any way, I'd be glad to.
Jay Myers, thank you so much for being on the show. Really appreciate you sharing some heartbeats with us today.
Appreciate it, David. Thank you.
All right. Wish you continued success. I want to thank you, Gonzo family, for listening and or watching. Appreciate you. Please make sure to like us, subscribe, the whole works on your favorite podcast app. New episode every Wednesday morning since October 2016. It's the most consistent thing I've done as an ADHD entrepreneur. It's the only consistent thing I've done. So thanks for that. Jay, thanks again. Thank you, everybody. Make sure to have a great day and stay awesome.
Appreciate it, David. Thank you.